evening. Would like to welcome everybody on this beautiful, beautiful Wednesday to the Parks and Rec Commission. My name is Alex Hackman. I'm so grateful to have many members here, so thank you for being in attendance. I'd like to call this meeting to order and move on to item number 2 of the approval of the August 9th minutes. So is there a motion to approve of the minutes as outlined? Is there a second? Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Item number 3, so now is an opportunity for public comment for any items that aren't on the agenda. And if you could please state your name, and we have the timer up here to keep it for 3 minutes. So there are.
It's not an agenda item tonight.
So we can talk about it. Okay.
Yes. Now is the time.
Okay. So I'm Sue Prothero from Iowa City, and tonight, or this afternoon, I'm representing City Park Pool Back to the Future. In a nutshell, this group is a large bunch of community members who are passionate about City Park and have organized to ensure that a future pool at least matches the current pool in terms of capabilities and the communities it serves. I brought copies of our vision statement, and I'm going to pass them around. And also, Gabe, I sent you one earlier today digitally, just in case you want. I don't care. So I'm going to start with a teeny bit of background, and then I'll make my point. One of our members walked you through this vision at your May meeting, so there's no need to do it again now. Generally speaking, though, we're focused on how the pool can be used and the groups it serves. So that's what the bullets are on the vision statement. While we believe that the present design of the pool checks all the boxes, we are not promoting a specific design at this point. So the Back to the Future Steering Committee met earlier this week to discuss the public input process that we listened to the Williams and Associates talk about in the September 5th council meeting. And the pages that we focused on are near the end of the slides that are in your agenda packet for tonight. So here's our point. We understand that the list of potential focus groups isn't set in stone, and that's why it's called potential. And Julie had told us that there could be 14 focus groups, and right now this potential list has only 11. So members of our steering committee identified 2 groups that we think should also be represented, and they are, 1, private groups that use the pool, like club swimmers and water polo. And the second group that isn't on the potential list is senior citizens. And this is a large group of pool users in our community, and we think that we should for sure seek out their input as well. So that's it.
Good evening. Hope you're all enjoying this lovely day. My name is Beth Bull. I'm also on the Back to the Future Steering Committee. I'm sitting in, by the way. During last week's presentation to City Council, one of the consultants said that replacing City Park Pool allows for opportunity for conversation between user groups. We believe in the power of our members of various user groups speaking to one another and coming to understand one another's needs, especially regarding the pool. If conversation is allowed, we have the potential for building community consensus, and isn't that what we should be aiming for? However, the current public input plan detailed in the next steps section of the slides in your agenda packet does not allow for discussion between user groups unless the open houses are structured in a way to provide this opportunity. So we just suggest that the open houses be structured in a way that provides an opportunity for real dialogue between community members. It's important that all types of users would be users hear one another's concerns and needs. We're envisioning an event where people are assigned to facilitate the breakout groups, each addressing the same set of guiding questions, and then reporting back to the larger group. Because focus groups are comprised of similar users, the public gathering will be the only opportunity for community members to hear, discuss, and understand disparate opinions. Thank you.
Okay. Any other public comment at this time?
Hi, my name is Karen Crane. I am from Iowa City, and I'm here to talk about the Robert A. Lee Pool. My friend Mark is passing something around. And as you might know, we have been gathering pool counts for 10 months. And the reason we're doing this is because the Parks and Rec Department have said that pool usage is insufficient, haven't defined sufficiency, but I'll set that aside, to support increasing hours, although I'm very grateful for the Commission's recommendation to increase hours. And the department has talked a lot about the numbers of users. And one of the things that I'd like to highlight for you is the actual number of users. If you look at page 5, this is a collage of all the pool users on a certain day. And it's important because 23 people who were at the pool on that day were not included in the pool counts distributed. So 23 people were not counted. I'm one of those people. You can maybe guess which one I am, not. But this is really important because you as commissioners are asked to make recommendations based on data. And if your data isn't good, your recommendations are not sound. And what I am suggesting that the commission might do is insist on accurate data. If you look at some of the other pages, it shows where errors are, and it shows how we know the errors are there, because we have looked at the video recordings on that day. And when they don't match the numbers that we get from the Parks and Rec Department, we know there's an error, and they're always less. So there's a consistent undercount that's been going on for 10 months. So going forward, I ask that the commissioners insist on accurate data, and I also ask very respectfully that you correct the inaccuracies that have been pointed out month after month in the submissions to this body. So correcting past data, insisting on good data going forward. We're happy to help. And I'll just say this as a citizen who's using the pool, we all count. And I want to be counted in every, if you're talking about pool users, I want to be among them, as does everybody else. We all deserve to be counted.
Thank you.
Just for clarification for both the public and for the commission, the last time you looked at pool data for your decision about hours, you did actually use the numbers and have all the numbers provided by the public as well as the staff numbers. You had both numbers side by side, just to be clear. That they have been reported and they were used as part of the decision-making process.
But what I'm asking for is accurate data from accurate data.
Any other public comment at this time? All right, we'll move on to item number 4.
All right, so tonight I have a brief presentation for you on our capital improvement project budget. There actually isn't anything on the screen. So commission members have a copy of the presentation. There are several out in the back if you'd like to see that from the public point of view. We have technical difficulties with the screen tonight, so we're going to do it the old-fashioned way. This is a few months earlier than the commission typically sees these, but what we like to do each year is walk the commission through what we are presenting as part of the capital improvement project budgets for the city. So what is the CIP project? These are our large capital investments in facilities. We have something, these follow our park master plan, natural areas master plan, bicycle master plan, rec facilities and program master plans, and other development opportunities. When you say, how in the world did we come up with the list that you see over the next 5 years? It's based on those plans. Now that being said, we are in kind of a really awesome position that we have almost fulfilled all of the park master plan. So in the next year or two, we'll be looking at a process to update the active areas of the park master plan, playgrounds and shelters. But there's a lot of other work that needs to be done, and we'll talk about that as we go through this. It's adjusted annually, so even though we ask for something in 1 year, as it goes through the process between now and January, you'll find things shift. And the biggest reason is the cost of your streets and street projects. So the large capital improvement plan has all the city projects in it. Street projects, other building projects, wastewater, water. It's funded in different ways, but largely the street projects, especially those coming from the general fund, kind of bump things around. So you have a multi-million-dollar street project and you have a $500,000 park project. Sometimes the park project just moves to make room one way or another for a street project. That happens a lot. So what I show you tonight is still in draft form. It is the prioritization of where our projects fall, but the actual years when you might see them when that final capital improvement plan comes out could be different. We do, the staff compiles the budget projects that we're asking for. It first goes through a staff committee, and at this point, the staff committee is staff from the finance department, the city manager's department, public works director, myself, and neighborhood services director. And we meet as an internal staff group to look at what projects, to do that first blush of looking where the projects fall and how much they are and where they might fit. Goes through the staff process a couple, 2 or 3 times, and then we'll have a work session with the council, usually in about the beginning of January, where they'll take a look at it, make recommendations, and the final plan happens later in January as they do the budget. As I said, we've only had 1 staff meeting now so far, and that has actually been about our annual CIPs, which I'll talk about are different from our project CIPs. So we haven't even had that first project meeting. Capital improvement budget, as I said, are the big projects. We also have an operating budget. So capital improvement for Parks and Rec is usually between $8 and $15 million a year. And that's things like, some of the things we've done recently are playgrounds, park shelters, trails, Head Mall playground, city park pool, anything at the rec centers would all be in our capital improvement project budget. We also have $11 million a year that is our operating budget, and that's a whole separate process. That's where most of the people that you see in Parks and Recreation are paid out of that. Smaller building projects like painting a room or replacing doors or things under $20,000 are in the operating budget. Just to give you a reminder what those, repairs under $10,000 go in operating budget. So then I'll just walk you through the projects that we have slated in for each of the years. The current year shows up again in this 5-year plan. So these are projects, the first one I have for you is just our annual improvement project budgets. These are ones that are earmarked each year for the various different areas. So we get $90,000 a year for park improvements. That number is varied between 50 and 100. Don't know exactly where we'll land this year. This is for smaller projects such as maybe a small trail connection that needs to be done, additional bike fixing stations, benches, things like park furnishings throughout our parks tend to come out of this budget. The park signs that we've been replacing piece by piece over the last few years has come out of this budget. Unfortunately, it also takes some of the overruns from our other large projects. So if another large project goes over, If we have money in the park annual improvement funds, sometimes that's used to backfill the larger projects. So I can tell you that for this current year, there is no money left in that particular fund. We've been using it piecemeal to fill in a number of gaps. We also get $30,000 a year for ADA assessments or accessibility improvements through the parks. This is what helped pay for the Scott Park, Rita's Ranch parking lot improvements and some of the trail improvements you've seen throughout the parks. $30,000 a year is about enough to address one park's accessibility issues each year. This would also be if we have a specific playground need or something that needs to be retrofitted, would probably come out of this budget year by year. Climate Action Facility Improvements covers all city facilities, so all buildings, but also all park facilities. So it's $250,000 a year. And ding, 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 this year, it's being used to replace the overhead lights at Mercer Baseball. So we are moving to LED lights at Mercer Baseball. So it's a general city improvement fund, but we're able to capitalize on it and use it for our project this particular year. It's typically been used for lighting upgrades and other energy efficiency upgrades. As we get some of those low-hanging fruits done, this will go towards more of the larger building projects in the future. We have a small fund for intercity bike trails and trail bridges. We'll talk more about this later in my presentation. We have a huge need coming up for the trail system. As I said, we're almost done with the park master plan. We've not touched our bike trails for most of them for over 20 years. And the price tag is going to be high pretty soon. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. We get $50,000 a year for rec center improvements. That's at both of our rec centers. That's smaller improvements. We're changing locks on the door up here, the door system up here. We're looking at doing some lobby refurbishment at Mercer, kind of projects along those lines. This also, though, pays for overages and other larger projects. So the recent Mercer indoor pool dehumidification project had some overrun on it. That came out of this, partially out of this $50,000. But as well, the new entryway that's happening at Mercer is being paid for somewhat out of this fund. And then we have $100,000 earmarked each year for tree projects and tree plantings. And Tyler, do we know next year's locations?
Yeah, we're looking at tentatively kind of the west side points north and south of Abbey Lane, and then back behind kind of east of West High in that area there. So going out west because we've been southeast for a while.
So other things that we have earmarked for some of these annual funds, here at Robert A. Lee, we have moving to the kitchen that's next door to us here, needs some renovations, and that will probably fall under that $50,000 fund. Some of the smaller outdoor improvements too, and some of the roof, we have large roof projects coming up, may take part of that money as well. Okay, so the 2023 projects show up in this process even though they're largely underway. And some of them are already done. So we go through these. The Hickory Hill Park Ecological Restoration is paid for by a REAP grant, and it's underway. Kiwanis Playground renovations has started. The field work is, I think, almost done, and the path work, no wait, Kiwanis, sorry. Playground is not yet come, but the site work is done and should be here soon. Wait, I'm gonna Tyler on that one. Hickory Hill Park North Shelter and restroom replacement should be done within the next 6 weeks, most likely. It likely will not open till the spring, but we think that the work will be done there. Happy Hollow Playground and ball field replacement. This is where the ball field replacement is essentially done. The paths are in. We ran into a few snags with the playground. The equipment's here. The size was different than what was spec'd on the site, so we're massaging it in, and it'll still work, but we've had to do a little more groundwork than we were planning on. Mercer baseball field renovations, those are on hold except for the lighting replacement at this point, because the school district is going to be partnering with us and doing some different things on this, moving softball most likely to Mercer. But pickleball tennis courts the contract was awarded. It's a little over $1 million, and that was awarded at the last council meeting. So that they can start work this fall, but most likely most of the work that you'll see on that will be in the spring with a July 15th finish date. And then Hunter's Run Playground renovations done except for a little bit of seating and finish work there. Those actually continue on the next page. We have what's called event facility improvements. These are improvements this year being done to the Riverside Festival stage in Lower City Park. These are some pretty high safety concerns for the groups that are using it for productions. We are in final design with Newman Munson Architects and should be out to bid within the next month or two for work to be done before the next spring season starts there at that facility. Willow Creek Trail replacement, almost done, just a little bit of finish work done there. Sturgis Ferry boat ramps, improvements will be, the contracts will be awarded at the next council meeting. We received 5 really good bids yesterday, so it's within budget, and that one will be moving forward. And then Carson Lake Park Planning is the land use area out to the west of 218, where there will be some new development and likely a new park similar in size to Terry Trueblood. They're just talking now with consultants looking to start the process, so we haven't heard much on dates or anything else, but that will still be happening this year. Stop me along the way, Commission, if you have questions. 2024 projects, so these would be starting yet this fall with most of the work after January 1st of 2024. We have money in here for Palisades development, park development, that's in the kind of northern area of the city. It's on hold right now because we still don't have the land dedicated to us from the developer. So we need to own the land first, and then it's a very small little park there, but that'll happen. There's another one that could happen near Stonebridge Estates, kind of by Fronholtz Miller Park on the northeast side. Same thing, we're waiting. We know the parkland is coming to us, but we don't own it yet. So once those two pass ownership, we will get started on building parks there. We're going to replace the roof at Mercer Scanlon. About ready to go, finish design and go out to bid for that project. Lower City Park restroom and shelter renovations. We talked about this with you at the meeting last month, so that will, if it's funded, would move forward. Calder Park, there is the new development happening on the northwest corner of Rochester and, am I saying that right, and Scott Boulevard. There is a way now to connect that development to Calder Park and at the same time finally provide actual ADA access to the playground and park. The park is interesting because the road is here and the park is down here, and it's a pretty steep hillside. So we've been waiting since the park was built to get a path in there, and this project should allow for that so we can have an accessible path to it. Terrell Mill Skate Park. We are just about ready to have the consultant contract done to start design and public input. That will replace the skate park at Terrell Mill, but also hopefully add a pump track. And at the last council meeting, the city manager talked about using some of the ARPA funds from leftover from after the COVID to help fund part of this project. So likely we'll have a fairly nice budget to do both the skate park and the roller park portion of the project.
What's a pump track?
What's a pump track? Tyler, I'm gonna let you answer it.
So it's in this instance paved, and it's a bunch of pumps and curves and banks and things that work together in a circuit that you can use bikes on, scooters on, skateboards on, even kind of a athletic style wheelchair could go on those. So a lot of different uses like that.
Is that by City Park? Is that?
Right, by the boathouse, kind of right on Dubuque Street.
I don't know if this is off topic or, but I know when I was listening to the council meeting, Councilor Burgess asked like how much traffic was at the park for the price tag to update it and things like that.
Yeah, she did ask that question. We don't have exact numbers, but we do know it is highly used.
Okay.
And I think that once we start with the public input process, we're gonna have the users of that park. They've been contacting us as staff for quite a while, so I think you will hear some very strong input about the amount of use and the ages and all that sort of thing. But no, we don't have an actual.
Okay, I was just curious.
We'd have to put a camera or something out there
Yeah,
that
sure.
did that, but yeah, good question though. Brooklyn Park, that's one of our older parks. We actually have neighborhood open space funds to pay for this, so it'll be in the capital improvement plan, but those are funds that developers pay in either for us to acquire more parkland, or if it's in a neighborhood where there isn't any more land or desirable land to acquire, then it can be used for park renovation and park replacement projects, so that we have enough funding there to replace the playground, which is needed. And then we hope to get College Green Park done, playground, and probably replacing some of Cass and the basketball court. There's conditions there. That would be in 2024. 2025 looks pretty small for a list. We realize you got City Park Pool in that list, and that could be somewhere between $10 or $15 million. So So that really takes a lot of our capital improvement funds for that particular year. That also includes the project to do the restrooms and shelter renovations. Some of those may be included in with the pool project, but either way, we'll be looking at all of Upper City Park. The other things on the list are ADA improvements at City Hall and then more land acquisition for the Carson Lake project. 2026 projects have a new trail segment along Highway 6. Then we have also a placeholder again here for this Stonebridge Park development on the northeast side, depending on when we get this land. Napoleon softball fields, renovating 4 of those fields, which is basically regrading them, replacing all the material on top, that sort of thing. Replacing the playground at North Market Square, and the school district is interested in partnering with us on this one because it's next to Mann Elementary School and they want to do some ADA things in our area as well. Rideau Street Park renovations, this is probably after Calder Park, this is the other park that still lacks accessibility up to the playgrounds, and that will get adjusted during that project. Benton Hill Playground renovations, most likely the playground, not the tree house, unless it needs a tree. It has a really unique tree house in that park, and it's in fairly good condition, so I don't know that we would do that. And then more work on that Carson Lake project. So that's a multi-year project once it gets going.
What's it called, Carson Lake?
I do not know.
Okay.
And that's a good question. Why is it called Carson Lake? It must be the current owners of the
Okay.
land. I'm not sure.
Okay, I don't know if that's gonna be the final name or.
No.
It won't be the final, that's just.
Probably, I doubt it, unless it's part of the acquisition papers, legal agreement.
say it.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, I haven't heard that yet.
Okay, cool.
Related to the Highway 6 trailer, I
Yeah.
was seeing that being put in. Are there any plans to extend it from Hines to Scott Boulevard at some point? Because that would make a nice circuit of those 2 main thoroughfares instead of having to cut through the industrial area.
The answer is long-term, yes. I think it was in the bicycle master plan even, but you don't see it in this 5 years of this budget, so not anytime real soon.
I have a question. How much the federal highway funds is devoted to trails versus roads? Or does it all come out of your budget?
So the money's put into our budget as a total dollar amount for the projects, and then it is sometimes backfilled by those funds, federal funds, but it's through a grant process, so we don't always know if we're going to get a grant or not. And then there's some funds that come through our MPO, the Metropolitan Planning Organization. And I'm sorry, I don't know the percentage of those and how much is each one of them. It's interesting, they can be used for trails. We've had some conversation about what kind can be used for the bridges, some of the bridges, and it can't be used for some of the bridges on the trails replacement. So there's some interesting parts of that.
Yeah. Well, if to make headway with trails, they're so expensive. I've seen some cities will do a set aside of certain, it's like we're going to dedicate this much money for the next 4 years, 20% or whatever it might be, so you can really take on some big projects, and we'd love to see something like that.
That would definitely be something that as a commission you could recommend the council to consider doing something like that.
Would it be possible to get some more information on what you do get?
I think we've had, and maybe before you were on commission, we've had Kent Ralston from the MPO come to this group and actually talk about trail funding and the priorities for it. So we can certainly have him do that again. That would be good. Okay, yeah.
I'm just curious about the public versus private. So it says Carson Lake, the current owner, so it is private, but,
Right now it's farmland.
oh, okay.
As it develops into housing development, this land will either be donated to the city through neighborhood open space or purchased by the city as a part of a water retention area.
Oh,
So
okay.
it's private as we talk about it today. The long-term plan is it will be public.
Okay, and that's the same with the Brooklyn Park place?
No, Brooklyn has always been a city park, but the neighborhood open space funds are funds that came in for a housing development nearby, and there's not a parkland to purchase in that area, so then we can use it for the renovations. neighborhood open space funds that we receive have to be used within a fairly close boundary of where they're paid. So in that district of where they're paid from. Okay, 2027 projects. I'm looking at some accessibility and other improvements at both of the dog parks, so Thornberry and Rita's Ranch improvements. There's one shelter at Mercer Park that needs to be replaced. Hoping to get a park maintenance storage barn, which would happen out at Kickers soccer field area. More of a, I like to call it a barn, I like to call it a shed. It's not a very big or glamorous building, but, and then in one segment of the Iowa River Trail. And then Oak Grove Park is, I believe, the last park in the series to get renovations. So Oak Grove Park shows up in 2027. The next slide, though, starts to talk about other emerging needs. And we list sections of almost every bicycle trail that we have right now, but with a pretty hefty price tag of about $5 million. So we have this in here. We're going to make a request for it. I highly doubt that much or any of it will actually be funded in this cycle, but we want to start talking about it, that we have conditions on those trails that are faltering fairly quickly, and we know that we're going to have to invest in resurfacing and replacement along the way. That's in there, in title.
One thing to consider with this, that number is a little bit higher than it would be if it was going back as asphalt, where asphalt is now, but these are all asphalt service trails. That we have not had good success with longevity of asphalt. So the idea, just like on the section of Willow Creek Trail that is happening right now, that it would go to concrete and just have more longevity for us for hopefully quite a few more years than that asphalt has.
All right, similarly, we've got a few parking lots that are in less than desirable condition. And these are another thing that haven't been included in our plan for a number of years. So Tyler and I have been working to get these assessed and at least get the planning started for them. But Scott Park, getting that parking lot actually with a harder surface if we're allowed to. Thornberry Dog Park, getting that paved. And then Mercer Athletic is a huge one that is going to need some attention fairly soon. Maybe not to the size that it is right now. Of course, that's something we'll assess. Does it really need to be the size that it is, a paved surface? But that'll need to come up in the next few years. And then we have some shelter replacements that weren't called out during the last park master plan. Their condition wasn't such that they warranted that, but they are now. So Mercer Park is listed there again. The South Hickory Hill Park shelter, and then Crandick Park, which is over on by Ashton House, Rocky Shore. Yeah. So, what do you notice isn't on that list? A little quiz for you all. There's nothing on there about either the indoor pools or rec centers. And you don't see that anywhere in this packet at this point. That's because, as you remember from the rec master plan, we said we wouldn't start talking about that again until after the city park pool. So it is well known through council and finance that at some point we'll need to come back and revisit that and start getting funding in place for whatever's done either here at Robert A. Lee or at Mercer. It's just not in this year's plan because the planning process and the thought process hasn't started at all for either of those. And then we have unfunded listings that are more than a year old. These are all projects. Some of them we asked for last year and didn't get, so they've been put on there. There's a trail loop we'd like to see at Fair Meadows. There's a trail connection on for the Southgate Avenue area to get it over to the Iowa River Trail. There's another trail between the Napoleon and Riverfront crossings. Actually, these might actually be on the other trail list that we just talked about. Whispering Meadows, getting the boardwalk improved. It's not a transportation trail, but it definitely is an experience out in the parks. There's another phase for Riverfront Crossing Park. In fact, there's 2 phases on here. Ashton House, second parking lot. This has been held up because it's really not been a good place for it. As we acquire more land in the neighborhood down there, I think this might come back to you as some options that aren't right on the riverfront, but maybe across the street. Nothing in stone yet, but just some thoughts there. And then there's 2 other big master plans, the Lower City Park Master Plan and the East Side Sports Complex Master Plan. Lower City Park has never been funded as a master plan, but everything that we have done in the last 6 years has been according to what that master plan said. So that's why you've seen everything move away from the river. The prairie has been reestablished. The playground was moved up on the hillside. When we look at the shelters and restrooms next year, we'll do the same thing. We're moving things out of the floodway and getting up to higher ground. The master plan had further work on raising the road to make it more of a barrier from the river to the rest of the park. That's not in any of the plans at this point. And it had some changing where there's 2 water retention areas and 2 small lakes there, ponds really. Drained those and made a different area off to the east side. Haven't pursued any of that. It's sitting there on the unfunded list.
So what is the fate of this unfunded list? Does it just sit out there?
It's to keep the list going so that council and finance staff know that those are still projects that we'd like to pursue at some point, most likely. And just to keep some price tags out there so that we're aware of the needs. We do know that going into both the capital budget process this year and the operating budget this year, it's going to be tight. We're being told to be very careful about what we prioritize, what we ask for, and don't expect huge increases in anything. Expect a very status quo budget at best. We don't think there's any reason that we would lose any staff, but I think you'll see us backing off on other projects and trying to find more efficient ways to do things that don't cost as much. Kind of
Just to make sure that I understand, the projects that go through 2023 and 2027 that we have here, you said things like RAL, Mercer, those are for after City Park Pool is taken care of. So do things like in the 2026, 2027 CIP projects, do those account for potential funding needed for RAL and Mercer and those places that
they've been
need some
discussed.
space?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's been discussed. It's just not listed as a project
Right.
because we don't know what the project would be. The other thing to remember is, like I said, year 23, 24, we're pretty close to knowing 23 projects have already happened. I think you can pretty much bank that 24 projects will happen as they're shown here. 25 is a little pretty, well, that's City Park Pool, so that should happen. But then 26, 27, 28, there'll be a lot of movement in those. Each year you'll see a new plan. It'll probably have the same items, but a lot of those things will shuffle around. The poor Mercer, or the poor Napoleon softball renovations have bounced around for years. And one of these days it's gonna stick and we'll get to do that, but yeah. Other questions?
As far as a sports complex anywhere in Iowa City, is there any talk of having like some sort of private-public partnership so that it doesn't fall all, that expense wouldn't fall all on the city?
Yeah, there was some talk about that a few years ago, and actually the Think Iowa City commissioned a study, feasibility study for it, and that's as far as it went at that time based on what they found in the feasibility study as far as attracting other parties at that time anyway. So I think it could come back up again, but it's not being actively pursued right now.
And was there any sort of plans to what would be included in that sports complex specifically?
I'm sorry.
What would be included in that sports complex specifically?
Yeah, there are actual drawings. It'd be better if I emailed it out to
Got
you.
it.
Baseball, softball, potential indoor facility.
Indoor pickleball.
That wasn't even the radar when we made that master plan.
Now we got a big radar.
But now, yeah, so, yeah, good question.
I just have one comment. So I live on Court Hill Park, and I think that was in plan last year to update that park. Most of the work was done. I'm not sure the status of whether there's going to be another shelter added, but I wanted to point out that the old shelter was dug up and removed, and it's been like a kind of a weedy field in the middle of the park for since that happened. So it's almost a year now. So I'd love to see that updated, replanted, and then also there's a number of old trees in that park, and every few weeks another big limb comes down. So I don't know what the process is for just doing some general upkeep on the trees.
Yeah, I'll let Tyler.
Yeah, so we have the shelter on hand that we're going to put in there. We just have to have the time and the funds to get the pad and the footings and everything poured for that. We've talked with the streets department, see if they can help us out with some of that to keep the costs lower. But that will be somewhere a little bit closer to the basketball court that's there, so not right back in that same spot. We can look at the seating again. We haven't been able to seed anything this year with the drought. It's a challenge to get things actually growing and going, but we'll take another look at that. And yeah, a lot of those trees are fairly old there. Older trees drop limbs fairly frequently, but we haven't seen anything that's super concerning looking at them. So it's kind of hard to know before they fall, type of thing. That park definitely took one of the largest hits of the trade show, though. So we're hopeful that what's still there will last for a while as the new trees we planted in there. So
There's a big limb that's just kind of hanging up in that tree. It's been there since the derecho.
Is it the one by the basketball court there?
I think it's like just north of the basketball court.
We can take another look. At the time, it wasn't deemed as a hazard or a big hazard there, so that's has remained. We'll take another look at it.
Okay.
Is it appropriate to report things like that via, is it the IC.gov Express, if you see that happen?
Very good point, definitely, yeah. Or email to me, works too, yeah, either way.
But for the general public, we can tell them,
Right.
things like that.
I see you have Express.
So I just love seeing kind of the enhancements for the ADA compliance and making sure accessibility so is on the plan. So the more that we can do to increase accessibility and making sure everyone has access to the parks and trails, it's great to see. So appreciate that as well here. Are there any other questions by the commission here in regards to the CIP plan? Yeah, and we have the chance now to recommend this plan forward, or going forward as outlined here to be taken forward. So a motion to recommend plan as stated, the park priorities as outlined.
I will so move.
I second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, Julie, for updates that way. It's always great to hear about upcoming projects. Feel more knowledgeable coming out of it, so it's always fun. So now we'll move on to item number 5. So report on city staff. Julie.
All right. I'm going to start with a couple of things, one from cemetery and a couple from the rec division. Brad had a family funeral to be at today, so he's not here. But first of all, good news. We have 30 trees coming into the cemetery in partnership with the Heritage Tree Foundation. And they'll be planted probably next spring at this point, but there are plans for more trees to be coming in. For the rec division, there's a lot of events coming up in September and October. I believe there's 9 different Halloween events, themed events, towards the end of October, so make sure you're looking at that. One of the newer ones that they're trying is a series of events on Saturdays here at Robert A. Lee called Sensory Saturdays. And they're meant to be play spaces and opportunities to use the pool or different things for people that would like to have less sensory exposure for their kids and for themselves. So that's coming through our outreach and inclusion program, but I think it'll be a really neat opportunity. There's some time in the craft room, there's some time in the gym. It's a little bit different each week, but definitely something new that we're trying. Penn Mall Playground, last month we had a concern about the cleaning the Penn Mall Playground. Just want to report Tyler's staff tried about 6 different things to try to get it clean. We were in contact with the playground company multiple times. It's still not great. We ended up with vinegar being the winner, I think, for the best thing to clean. But it's getting to the point where we've kind of worn the paint down, so you're actually seeing the cement come through the paint. So we're still in contact with the company to figure out it's not that old what's happening, but I wanted to follow up so you knew that it's not great, but we're definitely, it's definitely is clean, it just doesn't look clean right now. Yeah, so we do have that. There is a commission opening that the council will look at next Tuesday. We have 14 applicants for the open commission spot, and it doesn't have a male or female. It doesn't have to be one. Usually it has to be one or the other for ballots. This one could be either. So that's kind of interesting. We look forward to that. And then City Park Pool, let's go through the update of what's happening with that. Not on the agenda today because nothing has happened since the council meeting last Tuesday. We as staff will be meeting with the consultants again early next week to kind of set out the plan for the next phase of public input. So we'll have more updates for you after that. I did include the presentation that was on the council meeting. Council had a few questions afterwards, but not very many, and overwhelmingly chose to go ahead with replacement of the pool based on the current condition. With that being said, just a reminder to everyone that we don't know what the new pool is going to look like yet. This is all of a part of a public input process that will take place. We're hoping that the kickoff large public input open house type meeting will happen at the end of October. That's our target date for that. We're hoping in conjunction with the Halloween event that happens here at Robert A. Lee, so we have a large number of families and people already coming in. Probably something that would start earlier in the afternoon so that we have an opportunity for people that are worried about parking and the crowd coming down Halloween will come, but then also getting the families to come in during that time. And then we will move into the focus group phase, and it could be, as we heard earlier, up to 14 focus groups. Not all of them defined yet. The way that those will be chosen is that we have an online form that will be on the city website, and we'll also have paper forms at our facilities, but an online form that asks a number of questions that each individual will fill out one of the forms. If they wish to be included in certain focus groups, they'll need to answer questions yes to those focus groups. So it says, for instance, we plan to have a focus group that includes people with disabilities. Do you have a disability and would you like to be included in this group? They would check yes. You don't have to answer yes or no, but only if you answered yes would you be considered to be a participant for that group. Same thing for members and allies of the LGBT community. It says we plan to have a focus group specifically for people who want to talk about LGBTQ needs at the pool. Would you like to be considered for this group, yes or no? We ask if they have a swim pass or have had a swim pass in the last year. We ask what their primary activity is when they come to the pool, because we have one focus group that's focused on lap swimmers, one that's focused on aqua fitness / water walkers, and still to be determined what the others might be, but there's a list of items that you could choose from. That what's your primary reason? Sunbathing. But that'll be it. And so that'll be an online form. The people that choose who go into each focus group will not see the names attached to the people that are on that list. So they will get the spreadsheet with numbers assigned to each person, and based on their answers to the questions of what they've self-selected will be which focus groups they could be in, and we think it'll be a random number generator that actually then chooses the 10 or 15 people for each focus group. So it's blind to any staff of who gets in, but it also gives us enough information to make sure that we get a good, well-rounded group of people, or the specific groups for each of those focus group areas. I think it's the first time anyone's ever tried to do focus groups in this way. And the reason that we're doing this is it's because of our strong equity and diversity goals. We want to make sure that there's a quiet space for those folks and those non-user and historically underserved groups to have a place to meet with the consultants and talk about their needs openly. All that information will be published afterwards, but the groups will be private for that reason. After all those focus groups are done, and with those 14, that leaves us enough space to even have a general, mixed group one. We don't know that yet. We'll know more after we talk with the consultants and get a better idea of what they'd like, what their suggestions are for that. But once all that work is done, the consultants then will create 3 concept designs for the pool. And really the only things we know about that concept design is that we've told them it should be essentially within the fence line of the current facility. We don't plan on adding parking, and we want to keep as much shade, and we don't want to touch the trees. So we know that those are the things that will be included in any of the schematic designs. The rest of what comes out of those 3 designs is really up to the input received in the general meeting and the focus groups. So there'll be 3 designs. That then goes out to a survey, to both a statistically valid and then also an open survey, get results from both. And then it comes back for a decision with the council. So it's a long process. Not all of it is completely in stone yet because we haven't met with the consultants to talk through exactly how that's going to happen. But that's the plan right now and the reasoning behind what we plan to do with that. Any questions I can answer so far on that part?
Are the focus groups set in stone at this point? Or I know there was some
No.
talk of like some different groups to include or.
Yeah, we, in the consultant RFP, we included a list of 10 that we thought were appropriate for this community or would be useful. But that's one of the things we'll talk with the consulting team to see if there's others. Like we don't have a neighbor group for up by the pool. That might be one that we add. The Parks Commission is actually one of those 14 groups. That's the one focus group that will be open to the public. So you will have essentially a meeting with the consultants where it will be open to the public, but it will be going through the focus group process there too. So, yeah, it hasn't been completely determined yet. And I think it will also, we'll probably leave 1 or 2 open until we see how many people apply to be on the groups. And if we find there's an overwhelming number for one particular area that we can't accommodate, most people, maybe we add a second one for that particular group. That's another option that we have. Yeah.
This is just a comment, but I appreciate the inclusion of maintenance staff in that. I think that's really important.
I appreciate that, that the groups will have like privacy in that, because sometimes when you mix these groups, there's been hard to have equity of voice for the people that have a harder time talking in a big group or may have a legitimate concern that is really close to them. And so, yeah, I think that's a really good idea.
Also just beneficial to understand the process of determining how these groups are formed. I think that can be beneficial for the public to understand as well. So just making sure that that's outlined somewhere so the public is aware. So when people come and say, hey, wasn't I included? And so that we can go
That's
back
a
to
good
that.
point. Now, you may be wondering, why don't we have this information yet? We didn't know what we were going to do until last Tuesday night. So realize that that's why we've had a framework in place, but the actual decisions, we're already talking about how the marketing will roll out, but the biggest thing we'll need help with is getting the word out to everyone to register to be part of these focus groups. If they're interested at all, come to the public meeting, but also sign up to be in a focus group. That's going to be the key, and especially to some of our underrepresented populations. We've already talked with neighborhood centers and UAY and a few other neighborhood groups to say, help us get the word out about this, because we want all voices to be heard in this.
So our consultants, they're taking focus group input into their recommendations. Are they also being privy to just like general emails or calls from the public that are coming regarding the pool?
That's a good question.
Like what-
Between now and then, probably. They've seen all of the information that was gathered during the rec master plan, including all the emails that came into council and commission and everything during the rec master plan time, so yeah, probably.
Will there be any feedback from, or any consulting with the public once they create those 3 mock-up designs? Will the public be involved in the decision-making process there?
So right now, and I can't remember because I don't have it in front of me, there is one more meeting, and I can't remember if that happens. It probably happens right after those 3 designs are out. And then there would be a commission and a council meeting as well. Sorry, I didn't bring that part of it. It's probably here. Yeah, open house number 2 happens after the statistically valid survey. I've been so caught up on how we get the word out about signing up for the focus groups.
Julie, wasn't there a different name for the group that included what we would traditionally call a senior citizens group? For some reason, I was thinking it was called something different, and so maybe that's why there was confusion about that group being omitted.
I don't recall that, but we do ask people to give their birthdays on the form so that we will get a mix of all ages. And we do have a group that is kind of pool users other than lap swim or water walk, some of the other categories. But we can certainly think about doing one.
No, I was just thinking that we had called it something different than a senior citizens group, but maybe I was thinking of
It would have been older adults, but I don't.
maybe that was
I
it.
don't remember that we had. Yeah.
On that note, I just want to say, in terms of diversity and equity, I do believe that senior citizens, older adults, are a marginalized group and should be at least considered maybe for a potential focus.
All right, well, hear back or hear from next week, Tyler.
Yeah, so I'll keep it quick. Quite a few tree things though. We were notified this last week, last Friday, we received $5,000 grant, community forestry grant. So that is going towards a planting we already have planned with Kiwanis Group helping out. So they're going to be there with some of their affiliate groups at Hunter's Run. That is a week from Saturday. We're gonna hopefully that day get 47 trees in the ground in that park. Whether we get them all in that day or not, it's yet to be seen with the ground conditions. We're gonna try some, we're gonna test it out first, see how it goes. Especially they're expecting some youth to be there, so last thing we wanna do is have everyone struggling to dig that whole time. But that'll be a good project to get more trees in the ground.
And what time was that at, Tyler?
That's at 10 o'clock. So you're all welcome to join 10 o'clock a week from Saturday. I believe it's the 23rd out there. We'll just meet. You'll see a group of people in the park. We'll meet somewhere in there, probably near the new playground. We had to remove quite a few ash trees in that park, and we did that right before the playground project. So it'd be good to get some trees back in place of those. CIP tree planting, so we talked a little bit about that funding, that 100,000 that's there. This year's project that we've been planning since last year this time is about ready to kick off with planting. So most of those are going in the kind of southeast side of town and neighborhoods kind of surrounding Whispering Meadows Wetland Park. So that area has not a whole lot of tree canopy coverage, especially in the yards there. So getting some in the rights of way will really help bring some trees to that area. And then along with that, the infill planting project that's part of our operating budget is combining some funds too. So you'll see a large stretch of trees on Friendship Street, kind of by Fort Hill Park. And then you'll also see some all around town. We get regular requests for trees throughout the year, so that's when one planting project goes in and does all those at once. Another planting project we're planning for Benton Hill Park. Smaller project, about 10 trees, but the neighborhood specifically requested some trees there. Julie and I met with them in the spring, looking at kind of spots where they'd like to see some more vegetation. That park looks quite a bit different than it did 10 years ago before the Prairie Co-housing project was there and before the sidewalk access was along Millard Street there. So getting some trees back in there to help beautify that park. And those will be planted this fall. Playground is here for Happy Hollow. We're just waiting on that the border of it to be installed, and then our staff will be installing that in-house. So the hope is to get that in this fall, so long as the contractor gets that done in the next few weeks here. And like Julie mentioned, when we went through, most of the other projects are in process or have been bid out. So lots of movement on different projects right now. Any questions on any of that? Anyone?
I'm sorry, I just missed it. Which park was that tree planting happening?
Yeah, Hunter's Run Park. It's at 1050 Duck Creek Drive. So out west of 218, it borders 218 there, but if you turn right on Duck Creek Drive going out north, that'll take you right to it. Question? Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Tyler. Don't have anything as far as chair's report, so go around. Maybe start with Missy if there's any items for a future agenda.
I just had a question. Maybe we could review the pool counts and why that started. Because I can't really recall, but it seems to keep continually coming up, and it's in our packets every month.
Yeah.
So as an agenda item?
Oh, no, I was just wondering if you could answer
Oh,
that.
sure. So it started about a year ago when the rec master plan
Okay.
came out with some counts in it. As you know, the group of residents are counting every day, reporting their numbers. You actually use their numbers as part of your decision-making process for the hours. The numbers don't match, and we've gone over that a number of times, but they don't match for a number of reasons. Some of it is what they're counting. We don't count when staff are in the water. Swim lessons are counted through a different way. We've gone through this a couple different times. I don't have all the notes here. We don't dispute their numbers. We just say they're counting differently than we're counting. So that's why we provide you with both sets of numbers so you can see them both and make your decision between the two.
Is a lot of staff time devoted to that kind of?
Yes. And Brad's staff, rec staff, and Gabe gets involved with it more than I do, so I don't know exactly how many hours, but it is a fair number of hours for a couple different staff members each month.
I just wondered if there was a more efficient use of Parks and Rec staff time. I mean, I think because just since I've been on the Parks and Rec Commission, you guys have done a really good job of showing the kind of everything you're involved in. And I don't know, I mean, I don't know if it's something that we could table for a little bit and kind of see, I don't know, I mean, I'm sure that's not popular with.
I'm not sure it's your decision to make as a commission because the council had actually directed that we keep the numbers between now and the end of the City Park Pool project. So we'll have a full recounting of it at that point when we're ready to talk about it again.
Okay. Thanks for clarifying.
Anything else?
That's all.
All right.
I don't have anything for future agendas, but I just want to say personally, like, thank you and the council for your presentation at the city council meeting, and you and the consultants. It was a long presentation.
It was.
But it was really interesting and helped me understand a lot more of the context of City Park pool area that's going on there. So.
And you can all watch it if you haven't
Yeah.
watched it.
It was great.
Yeah.
But,
So it always seems like there's a lot of different events going on. I was wondering if it would be a heavy lift to include as part of our packet, like some events that might be relevant to the commission for the next month or so.
Yeah.
Because I know, we hear about different events throughout the meeting, but it's,
Ones where you may want to, we can do that. So you do have a list of kind of the upcoming events in the staff report, but I can have rec staff make sure they, maybe mark the ones that would be good for attending.
Yeah.
We haven't historically put things like tree plantings on that, but if that would be helpful, I can consider adding some stuff to that top list too.
Yeah, I just think it might be helpful just to have like a,
Running list.
have a running list of things that we might want to consider. Because that it's my fault, but I'll hear something, and then like 2 days later I'll forget about it and be like, oh, I wish I. But might. I also wanted to say just a couple things I've noticed. I was over at the dog park and I noticed there was like a QR code or something, so you can like register your dog online.
You can now pay
online,
through the
yeah.
parking app, actually.
Which I think is great because the animal service place is south of town, and it's a little out of my regular, so it's nice to see.
We actually moved to that because the cash box got broken into so many times. So we moved to having the cashless option, which is good. Thanks for noticing that.
Yeah, something else I had a question about. So I've been, I was just doing a quick count. I've been to probably since our last meeting, maybe 12 or 14 different city park facilities. And one thing which has been great, I just love seeing all the different parks, and I've noticed a bunch of new sculptures, which is really cool, or I think they're new. But one question I had was about the park bathrooms. It seems like a lot of times they'll be locked, and I don't know if there's certain hours for that, or what the policy
it's a
is.
combination. They're great with the new electric lock system. It was supposed to open them in the morning and then close them at night. We used to have a staff member that had to drive around every morning and every night to open and close. The problem is in certain parks, especially the public's figured out how to lock them midday or done it accidentally, we're not sure. But sometimes they get locked midday, and unless someone calls us, realize it's happening. And Tyler can talk, there's been some other issues with it.
We're in the process of fixing that piece, but it's a couple $1,000s for each door to fix that piece with a different way to do the system. We were one of the first ones really anywhere to go to this system and outdoor kind of bathroom recreation setting. It's good to be the first, but it's also a bit of growing pains with that. Another thing we found out is some of the hardware, especially this summer with all of that heat, overheats and then it blanks the system. And then we have to go back in and reset everything, and hopefully it doesn't fry the whole system. We've been trying to do some things in the back room where that is to keep that equipment cool. But as you know, they're not heated and cooled structures, so we've been struggling with that some. So part of that is, at times that will happen, and then sometimes there could just be someone in there. We've had that before, but we know the issue, and there's not one good, easy solution.
And sometimes if they're vandalized, they're locked for a day or two until we get them fixed. Unfortunately, that's been the case this summer too.
We'll start on the other ones.
This is something I wrote down as kind of a half-baked thing from many months ago, so bear with me while I try to organize my thoughts. But it was several months ago that I think it was Councilperson Alter was presenting the strategic plan for fiscal year 23-28. And it wasn't part of anything she mentioned in relation to this commission, but I did see something on one of the slides about the Iowa River. And I'm a fan of the river. I know a lot of people love our river, so I went and looked it up. And I saw there was a bullet point under the economy strategies about strengthening the Iowa River's role as a significant community amenity and tourism generator. And so I was curious how would that have anything to do with the parks and recreation? How would that play into, like, what can we contribute to that strategic point? And maybe that just keep in mind in the future, especially related to like riverfront crossings improvements and other park improvements.
It plays into all of those things around the river, but immediately after the strategic plan was enacted by the council, it was that was the guiding force for the large grant application we did along with Coralville and the county. We unfortunately didn't get the grant, but it looked at a number of additions to the river area, including a couple boat ramps and some other access areas. It actually includes the skate park and roller area and the Riverside Festival stage. So those two things are still being funded and included in that, even though they're not exactly right on the river. The two boat ramps are still in the plan, although I realize they weren't on your list tonight. They're about $250,000 each. So there's still the thought that we will keep working on those things, and because it's part of the strategic plan, it will boost any of our other grant applications as we look for other funding for some of those river-related things. So definitely still part of the scope of what we're trying to do there.
Let's see. I was just, like Brian was saying, there's a lot of the events, which is wonderful for Parks and Rec. And I was thinking about signage, and that it is for me, and I think for others who aren't on their computers or phones as much, at least not reading email, it's an effective way of getting the word out. And I was thinking, since there are so many, it might even be good to have the same sort of font so it's recognizable as a Parks and Rec event. For example, Prairie Lights with writer workshop readings, the calligrapher Cheryl Jacobson, she does the same thing, and it's always a picture of the person, and whenever you see it, you know this is a reading. And that would be neat if we could sort of establish that sort of marketing thing, and then put them downstairs, because it's so empty when you go in, and there's this, you could even put, a bulletin board, a cork thing, and I'm sure someone from the community has an extra one that would contribute. And honestly, I like design. I'd be happy to work with my partner on coming up with and showing examples to see just an image of each thing, like the sensory, the nose, etc., so that it's captivating to the kids as well. If they see a pumpkin, hey, what's that? There's a party? I didn't know. And also can help people plan ahead if they're all out for the month, as opposed to, maybe they'd even reserve it.
Yeah, Michelle from our staff works on exactly that. If you get a chance, bulletin board at the end of the hallway here has all of them, and I think she really has been working towards that kind of, so you notice our design maybe not quite to that level, but I'm sure that she'd love to hear that feedback.
Okay.
So
What's her
it's
name?
a meeting and talk about that.
Pardon, what's her name, Joanne?
Michelle. Yeah.
And yeah, and again, I think at the entryway, it's a good place for, like at Prairie Lights, there's that entryway, the bulletin board, everyone knows. And when I'm bored, I go there to see, hey, what's going on? Let's see, the other thing, a person came to me a few weeks ago, and he's a friend of mine since childhood and has lived all his life. He's African American, doesn't really matter, but kind of it does, I guess. He was a swimmer, competitive swimmer, and I asked him if he'd been using the pool here, and he said he won't use it on general principle because they demand an ID card, and back in the day, they never did. And he felt it was uncommunity-like to have to present an ID card to get into the Parks and Rec. Just as a public library, you don't need an ID to go into the public library. You do to check something out, to rent something. And I know we have rentals for roller skates. But I don't know, it gave me pause and I was thinking about it. He said that, like when he was a kid practicing swim meets, they'd see homeless people taking showers and, you know, they kind of tease him about it. But then thinking about it now as an adult, I mean, I don't know, is it a bad thing? I don't know, I'm just putting it out there, and I did like the principle behind it. We are a public place and anyone should be able to at least come in, but I'm just wondering, would there be security issues or what's the impetus
The
behind
passes
that?
are free for people to register to get the passes. There's not a cost involved. It is part of our overall security and safety.
Okay.
That way we know who's in the building, when they're here, if there's a security or a safety need, and we need to know how many people are in the locker room or who we can count people pretty quickly to see where they're at. It's also been very useful when there's been issues, patron issues, from minor to major, to have the names and pictures of people. So it's been in place as long as I've been here, so I don't know exactly what started as doing that, but yeah.
He did say that they demanded that he present 2 forms of ID, and so is that not the case anymore, that you can just ask for a form?
I don't think that's the case.
Like a bill or something?
I was working on customer service since at least early 2019, and if that was the process prior, it may have been, but somebody may have asked for an ID for entering in the information, but by no means is it required to use the facilities. We would just ask the questions otherwise, or.
But you need a home address, is that correct?
A lot of people use shelter house.
Yeah, yeah. Well, there's a lot of unhoused individuals that have ID cards with us and will use our facilities every day.
Oh, nice.
We generally, sometimes have fill in. It is like a requirement for the info to be entered in, but we don't necessarily require like proof of housing or like a letter or something. Yeah.
Awesome, thank you.
Anything else, Ricky?
I don't know.
Okay.
I just had one kind of specific one. I participate in a kind of like soccer club with the community, and we were just chatting a little bit back and forth. Oftentimes we'll use the University of Iowa soccer fields that they have over there, I believe on Mormon and Shrek. But they can reserve those for their private events they control when the nets come down, those type of things. And to our knowledge, kickers, that park is mainly for private use, more for the kickers, organization and all that, which I understand for field maintenance and so on and so forth. You don't want a bunch of people coming and tearing it up the day before game day. They were just curious if there is anywhere, any park, any land that could be allotted towards an actual, public space that isn't controlled by the university or controlled mainly by Iowa City Kickers, that they'd be able to, kind of set up shop in the future.
It's not quite accurate that it's controlled by kickers,
Okay.
but it is used a lot by kickers, so there may not be use times that it tended to, because it's actually Brad's staff that does the rentals and whatnot.
Yeah, ISC uses it, but a reasonable amount as well, so they're another community group outside of kickers that a lot of people are involved with as well, for all different ages, especially with that group. So there may be an opportunity to get involved with that group, or I don't know the exact.
And it is available for rental, it's just not available very often for rental.
Right.
And we consider the Kickers to be our partner group, not a, just as for semantics, not a private organization, because we don't offer youth soccer as an organization, so there are partner group that does, so they're supported by us, but as a partner group. But yeah, I can have Brad get in touch with you with more information about how often and where it could be. As far as other parks, I know that there's a fairly large group that plays at Weatherby. It's not an official field there either, but it has soccer goals up, and then Happy Hollow Open Space has a lot of people that just play there as well. It's not reserved, people just show up and do pickup games, but there are nets there for that reason too.
There's some permanent goals, no nets on them, but at Fair Meadows as well, and that large open space. So that might be an option. It's informal, no lines, but you still have the goals available for good pickup games and things like that.
Fantastic.
That's all I got.
A lot of my questions were answered actually throughout the meeting. Like, I don't need to talk about that. Melissa just made me think of something. I was riding my bike past the stage at River Crossing, and it looked like, oh gosh, this is like a place a band could play and like have outdoor stuff. Was that part of the plan? And
it has been part of the plan. We had actually tried to do a kickoff event there, which was a fairly large concert. We got rained out.
Okay.
And then COVID came, and then a couple of other things. So we have not really been successful in marketing as a place for large concerts. We've been in some initial talks with Summer of the Arts, though. They may take it over as a concert venue in years to come as well. So it actually was set up for that. Part of it, the biggest complaint we get is the trees aren't grown in yet, and there's not much shade. But yeah, it's definitely what it's been planned for.
okay, it looked like it. I'm like, I don't think there's ever been a concert here, so that makes sense. Good. Okay, and then, the other thing, of course, about the pool, just groups. I think it's, we hear about all the people that are using it, but also just trying to find a group of people that are not using the pool because like they're caretakers of people with disabilities and it's not accessible, or they're parents with small children, those kinds of things. I don't know if there's a way to flush out some group of, it's hard for them to get out anyway, and then there are a lot of barriers.
So we have that, and we actually are planning on one group being a caretakers group. And we're talking about things like, we hope to provide childcare during those focus groups, looking at what other barriers might be to get people there. We don't really think we'll do Zoom as an option, except for possibly the use of the caregiver or the disability group, possibly. But we're kind of looking at all those things. But the thing that all of you could do is help us get the word out that not only will people be able to fill out this online form, but at the bottom will be a box for other comments. And if people feel like there's a group missing or there's something else they want to say, there's that option too. So we may learn more about that.
Okay, thank you.
When will we know as far as more details about?
So staff is meeting with the consultants early next week.
Okay.
So in the next week or two, I would guess we would have some dates nailed down.
Is it possible to get a communication information with that info?
We should be able to do that as soon as we get those dates set, and rooms booked and everything else.
Anything else coming from?
Oh, good, thank you.
Just want to thank staff for all the hard work in making so many events happen, as well as just the care of the parks that we enjoy every day. So just want to extend gratitude and thanks that way. And with that, is there a motion to adjourn?